Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Blessed. How about yourself?
I'm good, thank you. Let's see. Okay.
I was kidding with some of my parishioners. I said, I'm going to have to stop going to school because that's the only time that people die.
Oh no.
In my first 3 semesters, I've only been in the pastorate for a year, and in my a little over a year, and in my first 3 semesters, I've had at least 2 deaths in each semester, but none outside of school.
Oh my gosh. Yuck.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Funerals are definitely not my favorite part of the pastorate for sure.
Mm-mm. I would rather do a funeral than a wedding though.
Yeah, I just got blessed to be asked to do my first one of those in August. So
Oh,
any advice, you're more than welcome to send my way.
yeah. If you can work with a wedding coordinator, they're a godsend. Um, yeah. I don't know. I have 3 or 4 rules for weddings. One is no surprises. That I did a wedding and 500 people there, and they're all down front. I'm up front with the groom and the groomsmen, and the bride does not come down. The wedding march has started, and she's in the back, and the music is playing, and he's up there. I thought he was going to go down,
Oh,
and I
no.
don't know what to do. And my pastor had told me, 'cause I was an associate, and he'd gone through all these things, what to do when the bride's hair catches on fire, and like when somebody faints. I had no clue what to do. And then her voice comes over the loudspeaker and says, "Oh, you're just my love. And on this day, it's such a special
Oh no.
day." Yeah, so no surprises. Um, I want to clear the music. One of the weddings I did, the recessional was Fat Bottomed Girls. And
Uh,
the bride had gained like 25, 30 pounds in the year before her wedding. So I need to know that. I don't remember. Oh, and you have to pay me the in full. There they are. You have to pay me in full by the wedding rehearsal. And at the wedding rehearsal, I need to see your license, because I can't marry you without a license. So yeah, those are my 4 rules for weddings. And how much do you charge? It's the cost of the bride's dress.
really?
Yep.
That's
But I
interesting.
I tell them that, because when they say, "What do you charge?" I'll say, "Well, I'll tell you what my friend's rule of thumb is." And it really is. It's his friend who charges the cost of the wife or of the bride's dress. And so what I tell them that, and then I say, um, my fee is what it's worth to you. And remember that you've asked to be married, by a minister, not by a justice of the peace or a judge or somebody,
Sure.
and it's for the rest of your life. So yeah, those are my 4. Good morning,
Appreciate it.
everybody. Yes.
Hi, sorry.
You're fine. Good morning. Good morning. Hey,
Good
listen,
morning.
I've got your assignments for next week if you would like them. I don't have them written on paper, but I thought I could give them to you now so you have them, and then I'll have them posted later this afternoon. So Lucy, you have First John, and Jerome, you have Second and Third John. And Shelley, you have Revelation 1. Jeff, you have Revelation 2 through 5. Jean, you have Revelation 6 through 9. Bruce will have 10 through 12. Sarah will have 13 through 15. Ashley, you have Revelation 16 through 19:10. Marcia, you have Revelation 19:11 through 20. And then Robin's going to bring up the rear with 21 and through 22. But I'll have them posted up there. I want to run one more piece by you. I know that this is Holy Week, and relatively speaking, at least, this is a lot lighter than this past week. And of course, we've got Revelation, which is huge and has so many layers to it. But I'm wondering how you all feel about not posting after Thursday, since it's Maundy Thursday and takes us into Good Friday. I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding.
Absolutely.
You can be okay with that? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. It's going to be a busy time.
Yeah. With a funeral thrown in there. Yeah. 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 Good. All right. All right. I'm just,
And I've struggled this week to get everything, and I've still not posted on everyone's. I've had meetings Monday, Thursday, Friday. My Thursday meeting went to 9:30 at night, and my work has just been crazy. And I've been trying to do as much as I can, but I know I'm not getting it all accomplished.
not to worry. Not to worry. I was sitting there, I've been reading, and then I realized, oh, I haven't even acknowledged that I'm reading. So then I went back and I started to say, you've seen probably, good and blah, 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 and whatnot, but I haven't gotten to everyone's. And so Marcia, I don't think I was able to say to you, nicely done. So you all have done really well with a lot of material. And I hope, has it been helpful? Do you feel like you've got, not a grip on a book or on all of these books, but that you've got something to go off of, that you feel that you're at least minimally resourced into the future? Jeff, you're making a funny face there.
What I
thought
find
this
is
was
that as we're
good.
moving through the material, every once in a while, I shouldn't say every once in a while, most of the time, there's some content that is kind of like, well, this is something worth digging into deeper. So the aspect of, I don't know, the other day I was thinking, it reminded me of a foreign exchange student I had from China that came over and went to the grocery store for the first time to pick out a box of cereal and came back without it and cried.
Oh,
Because there was too much. And we said, well, pick something that looks interesting and let's find out if you really like it. And she's like, no, I can't, there's too much.
oh.
And so there was at one point going through this stuff this week, I went, oh, I'm that girl.
I agree.
Yeah.
What I found really interesting in going through this, I actually said this was a good exercise, especially under pressure, because you had to do it, versus going, oh, I'll get around to it eventually.
Right.
What really stood out for me is I'm reading this and just thinking about, okay, modern context, find a modern context for what we're doing. And you know what? I went back to Billy Graham, the Evangelist. And I started really thinking about what we were reading in Paul. And I go, wait a second, and I, on one of the posts I said, Paul did not write a systematic theology.
Right.
So you have to sit down and really kind of decipher what's going on here. But if you think about Billy Graham, he's going around the country and he's preaching and, he's drawing the crowds and people are coming and listening to him. But there is no book written by Billy Graham saying, okay, here's the basic tenets of the Christian faith. So that really helped me to sit down and go, okay, think about what's going on here. We've had real life examples of this where, you don't have to go back, okay, I have to sit and think, 2000 years ago, what happened? If you look at the life of Billy Graham, he had a lot of people following him, and the media grasped onto him, and everybody knows about a Billy Graham crusade. But at the end of his crusades, he always said, you need to get attached to a church, because he was there preaching the good news, but he was not there to teach you about the ins and outs of growing in faith. So I think really reading Paul and seeing that and going, oh, okay, well, okay, this makes sense. So this, if you think about Billy Graham and the civil rights movement, and in the beginning, he even said that later in his life that he had regrets that he didn't do more.
Mm.
But he's working through this culture of it's a very unrestful time in the country. And Martin Luther King and him did talk. But he didn't quite understand what Martin Luther King was doing.
Mm.
And he also thought, the South isn't ready for this yet.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, he's having this struggle with himself about, do I bring this up? And then, he kind of made the decision, no, it's more important for people to hear the gospel. But then later on in life, he kind of reflected, what, I should have done more. So it was kind of neat to actually read and go, what, I think we elevate Paul to like this super status.
Yes.
And then stop and say, what, this is a real person, okay? He is on fire with the gospel, no doubt about that. But you know what? There are things that he's trying to figure out as well.
Oh, yes.
So I think it was really good to see that and to go, okay, is Paul still very essential to the faith? Yes. But it kind of helped to take him off the pedestal a little bit, and say, okay, this is a person. And he had this glorious revelation. And he's still figuring out too, as he's preaching. And you have to keep that in mind as you read what he's doing, like especially reading Galatians and seeing how he's really harsh, man. And then reading Romans and then go, okay, yeah, I could see he's really worked at this. He's grown, and his theology, probably if there was a book on theology, Romans would be it.
Yeah.
So it was really cool to see that and see his progression over time. And then actually to say, you know what, I wonder what other things, because we know he has letters that we don't know what happened to him.
Right.
And go, I wonder what other things he wrote that, we just don't get that full picture of Paul. So it was really kind of cool to sit there and go, if there's tons of books about Billy Graham. Billy Graham has his, there's Wheaton University, and they kind of have their own center of Billy Graham studies. And actually going, maybe I need to learn a little bit more about this person and what challenges he was facing as he was trying to proclaim the good news, and realizing he's an evangelist. So theology is kind of second tier to him.
Right.
And not get all worked up over this and go, okay, Romans is probably the best shot at theology we have from Paul, and I need to spend a little bit more time in that book.
Yeah. I love the analogy. Yeah. One of my staff pastors back in Seattle, he came to faith, became a Christian at a Billy Graham crusade. And a crusade came through Seattle, and months and months and months before we were told that he was going to be coming, probably a year, maybe 2 years, that he was coming, a crusade was coming. And they were asking for help on the front end, but then also on the back end. And would your church be a place to receive people? But we had to have training to be one of the recommended congregations. And Gary moved us along and through that. But boy, you want to see a guy on fire. He is one of the two best evangelists, like feet on the ground evangelists I've ever met. He was absolutely amazing. And still after, golly, I don't know, 30 plus years, he's still on fire, and he takes and puts it in very relevant ways. He was a soccer player and played soccer around the world, and got hooked up after Billy Graham. He got hooked up with a Christian soccer association, again, global. And so he would go and they would play soccer with people, but then part of that was sharing the gospel, and is doing that, I think, in the States. And I don't know if he still is, but he was the unofficial chaplain for is it not Sounders? Maybe it's Seattle Sounders. Jeff, you might know, it's the soccer team up in Seattle. I don't know. It's been so long, but
No, I can't think of it right now.
I know it's not like it's a big, big sport for a lot of us.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, the Billy Graham. But Lucy, you are spot on about Paul. And they say that you can tell if something's a mystical experience by whether or not you have words to explain it. Does that make sense? So so you take the mystics and you'll see in the mystics, they're just working with words. And some people, think, oh my gosh, they're just crazy. And what's that about? But they've had this experience, and what they're trying to do is work out language. And so Paul, over and over again, that's what he's trying to do. And then you get more information, right? Because you're seeing what's happening, and you know that it's happening through the Spirit. But what is that? And then he's working with not just concepts, but within the boundaries and the bounds of the language he has available. The language just isn't there literally to be able to communicate it. So in deference to my classics professor, Greek classics professor, who said, I don't think Paul knew what he was talking about. I think it really was a language problem. He just didn't have language or ways to express what he had experienced and what he was experiencing.
I know for me, it was a really big contextual experience, because I found through this exercise, it was able to shed the light on the fact that I am really bad about taking individual pieces of a book instead of taking the whole book in context and trying to contextualize, okay, I go a little before, I go a little after, and I take this piece of the puzzle, and this is what I'm looking to preach today. But taking this exercise and seeing how this whole book really comes together in a slower, more, with the exercise we did, breaking it down as it comes individually, it really showed me a lot.
Good. Yeah, we all have working Bibles, right? The passages that we like the most, the ones we're most familiar with, sometimes, especially with Gospels. And I'm just limiting it to New Testament talk here, but we have those stories that we lean on and into, and the rest is just out there. When we talk about Jesus's love and how loving he is, this is the Jesus who said, I bring a sword, right? Leave behind your mother and your father, who really has that. He goes into a temple. We love to tell that story, right? And he goes in the temple and he just listen to that, but we just say, he went into the temple and, and he just overturned the tables of the money changers. No, he got mad, and not mad, he was furious, and that fury got the best of him, and I know I should not do this, but I'm doing it anyways. This whole Will Smith deal going on, right? And all I think about it, is it right? Is it wrong? But what I really think, what I see there is this man who is so pissed off at what has been said. He's not thinking it through. He's reacting, not responding. And so he gets up there, and for all the right and wrong of it, we're seeing a person out of control. I don't think any one of us would disagree that he was out of control, but I think, wow, how many, maybe all of us, if something, whatever that is, what is that could get the better of us? And so Jesus, within his humanity, that's pretty violent stuff. And going in there, yeah. And I love this theory that's out there that he took on our sins, right? If you'll go in that part of theology, right, and we can talk the different theologies come at Jesus, and his death, and how, why, how, what was really going in there. But if we hold to this thought that he is taking on our sin, and to take it away, right? He's that lamb, that scapegoat, lamb, if you will. He's becoming more and more human, right? So he's taking on, bye, I love you. He's having breakfast with friends of ours. So he's taking on all of this stuff. And so what we're going to see is more and more of this human side coming out, right? Because he has to really give up all of his God, which is what Paul says, right? That he came and he emptied himself of that, of his godhood, of his God self, and became human. And the word that's used that for, giving up, it's ektino, which is really pouring out. I mean, this is not just like this little stuff, this was poured out of him so that he could take on our sin. And I don't know, I remember exactly where it was. In a way, it was just this huge aha moment. And I really don't get science very well, but one of the things I remember is that if you have a beaker and you put liquid into it, it pours out the liquid that's in it, right? And so, what happens is Jesus is God, and he comes in this human body. So the beaker, the walls, and the more and more of our sin that he takes on, the more human, if you will, he becomes, the more that his godhood leaves us. So that what we find on the cross is a total human person, right? He's carrying all of our sin. So I don't know, for better or worse, there it is. As we head into Holy Week.
Well, if you think about it, our church has been doing a series on, leading up. They did it on the Sermon on the Mount. And, he was talking about at the beginning where he says, on the Sermon on the Mount, do not be afraid, God takes care of you. And I remember sitting in the pew going, but at the very end, right before he's arrested, Jesus is literally, he's in torment. He's sitting there and, literally the stress is so bad. He's sweating out blood, which is a medical phenomenon. It could happen if you're under that much duress. And he's pleading with God, is there any other way? Not my will, but yours. But is there any other way to do this? Because he knows this is going to be painful. So I think sometimes we forget that Jesus is fully human too. And, how is he going to identify with our suffering if he doesn't take on that experience? A holy God is totally foreign to us as humans. So he had to experience what it's like, even up to the point of death. An excruciating death, and I think sometimes we're so afraid to go there.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. That our Jesus may not be that Jesus that we need, or that we need him to be. If you I've said this before, I know if you have not seen The Chosen, you have to watch it. And tonight, starting tonight, they're doing an evening to take it through Easter evening. And Lucy, you bring it to mind because of the Sermon on the Mount, and it's watching Jesus. These last few episodes are him working on the Sermon on the Mount. You know, he has a message and he wants to say it, but how is he going to say it? And he brings along Matthew, I think it is, you know, to talk to him. Is Jeff? Yeah, he trusts Matthew to, you know, to play back and forth. It's beautiful. And you know, is it gospel? It's the backstory in a way. You know, you get the pieces from the Bible, but it's what could have been going on. And you know, again, it's here's Jesus, here's what we see, and we talk about him in these academic ways, but really what's going on under there? You know, who is he? You know, a lot of pastors are upset, and I may step on toes here, I won't apologize. A lot of pastors get upset about mega churches in their communities, and they get really upset when our people might go there or visit there, and you know, they're teaching wrong theologies, and how can our people go there? And in those pieces aside, over and over again, I ask, do you not trust your own teaching? You know, if you trust the teaching you've been doing, if you trust what we purport, then what does that matter? You stay away from those kind of people. I don't hang with those people. Well, okay, but do you not trust what you know, what you have to say? And there are a lot of other reasons that go into that for not wanting to do that, and I won't argue those today. To ask, what do you believe? Is it enough for you? Is it strong enough? And do you trust it? Do you trust it?
I was having a conversation this week with one of my board members on Lydia's house. The majority, all except for a couple of us, go to a single church, and we all have different theologies. They believe in baptism is salvation. We try to set that aside for the good of the girls in the house. And she said something that really resonated with me right along these lines. She said, no matter what the teachings are in that church that we may disagree with, my question is can't God still work through that? Isn't God bigger than that? And I just kind of stepped back and I said, wow, amen. That's about all I could say. But, you know, she really challenged my line of thinking because of, you know, I've been around these people for a long time, and I see some of the fruits, and in my eyes, which shouldn't be even a thought, they weren't exactly what I would line up with. But by the same token, you do see a lot of people come, at least initially, to Christ there. So that question bared a lot of weight for me. You know, hey, can't God still work through, even though that they may not have this transformative effect? They're getting introduced to the gospel. So maybe it's time for Jerome to once again step back, step out, and let go and let God. So it was a really, really interesting how one comment could really change a lot of my thinking, because it was something, you know, I talk about my pastor failures every week to my congregation so we can grow together through the refining process. And it never fails, something every week. If you're willing to humble yourself and realize it, you know, there's a never ending world. But that one comment, can't God still work through that? It did me a lot of good.
Thank you for sharing.
I'm thinking you're talking a little bit about the danger of generalization. You know, life is complicated. The world is complicated. We try to adopt fixed action patterns in our thinking and the way we do things to simplify it. So we want to put things in a box that are complex. your comment on mysticism, that struck a chord with me because, it's part of what can kind of knock people off their balance is talking about mysticism as a subjective experience. It's not necessarily objective because it has to do with the what's unexplainable, but what's unexplainable can be very subjective.
Yes.
And then Lucy's comment about Billy Graham and getting people to church, I find that so vital. That was so important to him. And this last week, one of the older ladies in one of our small group studies, she's one of the matriarchs here in our congregation. Super nice lady, very wise, foundational presence here in the community. Used to teach in the schools for years and years and years. And anyway, we were covering, how the Bible came to be and the need for the contextual, relevance, the historical, geographical, and cultural. And she said, how can a person learn what we're really supposed to know separate from being involved in the church?
Mm.
She says, it seems to me if I was trying to do this on my own, I could go off in all sorts of weird directions, and then that's where the group went, well, yeah, that's where cults come from. And pretty soon you're drinking poisoned Kool-Aid because you think you're right. And how many people I've talked to recently, the last few weeks, with statements like, yeah, I have my own personal relationship with God. I don't need the fellowship of the church. I really appreciate all these things that God has given me. And then, the question, trying to figure out how to gently introduce it is it the God of the Bible or is it some other God?
Mm.
Is it a new and improved version you come up with because you don't like what's in the Bible?
Mm-hmm.
So then our job then, how do we reach out and connect? And how do we get our leaders to recognize the importance of, modeling what we need to be doing? Because how can we expect new members, infrequent attenders, visitors and guests, how can we expect new people to the church to practice spiritual disciplines or adopt, habits that are productive if the leadership doesn't do it itself?
Right. Yes. Yes. That's why it is so important to have those leadership covenants in place, to have your vision, mission in place, right? We just watch what happens over and over and over again when that's not the case. And it becomes disastrous actually, to watch. Yeah, we were in Columbus, Ohio last week, where Bill was working with the UCC, or he's working with the UCC church, and to go and to visit them and to see that what they purport is not being shared amongst the leadership, was something they got dinged on, if you will, to have to say, okay, this is something we have to address and you're going to have to work through and on for the next however many years. And they're having to move. They're in a financial position. They have to sell their building. So that means they have to move and find someplace. So where are they going? They're in downtown Columbus, and they have a ministry and a huge commitment to the homeless. Well, that's good. How are you where are you going to do that? And why is that? Why do you do that? What underlines that? What lies that? What is your vision? What are your values? Your values seem to be clear, although they're not playing out everywhere. In a lot of places, they're not playing out. So you have to have clarity, because really your location is a tool, right? How you do worship is a tool. We say, well, we need to have this kind of worship to attract people. Okay, that's great, but how does that fit into your values, your mission, your vision? So Jeff, like you're saying, with spiritual disciplines or spiritual habits and the like, how are we doing that? How does that show up? How do we teach that within our worship service? And I don't know, maybe you all have been to these and maybe you are doing it. I bet I've gone to too many worship services where it just feels like the minister's ready to get out of there. Let's just go through. Okay, we just did the, I don't know, opening prayer, the invocation, and now we're going to sing the opening hymn and blah, blah, blah. And we fight over his communion in the middle. God forbid that you move communion by even 5 minutes within your service, right? Because that's what it's all about. Well, folks, let's just, how is that, what is under there, and what are we really about? And where's Jesus in all of that, right? Where's Paul? What would Paul say about, oh my gosh, communion isn't here. Communion isn't there. You don't say the magical words exactly right. Aren't they the magical words? I mean, even to what they are within in the Latin, it comes about, it's out of mystery and the like. Yes, when I graduated from seminary, I literally, in all of my Bibles and the hymnals that were up on the stage, the chancel of the church, where I was an associate, I had the cards with the magical words. I'd printed the magical communion words just in case I had to serve at the table, on the night that Jesus left. And I still go to churches where the ministers, you have to elevate. We have a book on this. Bill took a class where, it's when to raise the bread and where it goes with magical words and how to raise your hand. Like, okay. And I guess that's important in some settings, right? If that matches their values, vision, and mission. But so many of us, we're just going through the motions. And, it struck me one day when I didn't say the magical words and I wasn't struck dead or dumb, that maybe that was okay. And that it began to make a whole lot more sense when I was able to connect that with what just came out of the message, or how somebody said something, and we began to, and to bring this back to Paul for a moment, he says, for this I become this, for that that I become that, right? And then when he gets there to the agora and he talks about, there's this pedestal to the unknown God, and let me tell you about this God that you don't yet know. St. Patrick picked up on that, where he was able to take the shamrock, and that was something that people there in that community of Ireland, that village, they knew. And so he then begins to teach them Father, Son, Holy Spirit, this triune God. He used what they knew. So is it in your community, in your setting, that people understand? How can you connect that back to God? What in your preaching, in these letters that were taught, what's in there that you can take them and shape, not just as you're saying, Jerome, not just that verse or that passage that really seems to fit. What about, Philippians? What is in there?
Well, when you talk about that, I'm sorry, I about lost it. My congregation, of course, we take communion every week, and it's very structured. The pastor goes behind the table, and I give something to get you in the state of mind of the sacrifice and everything. And one week I stayed up at the pulpit and I went further and talked to them about the dangers of taking communion when you're in the wrong state of mind. And I thought after that, I was going to get lynched. I mean, everybody was just beside themselves because I had said something about communion that apparently nobody in the church or hadn't in years hadn't touched on. And then the following week, I had probably 20 different people come up and say, that really made me angry, but I needed to hear it. So, I mean, but like you said, the initial response was, you do not mess with communion. And that was what you said was wrong, even though I was reading it right out of the Bible. So yeah, that really resonated with me. That was like, wow, no, I'm not sorry, because we obviously needed to hear it, but it's one of those things. Sometimes if your toes don't hurt, your pastor's not doing the job.
Ooh, I like it. Yes.
You took on the T word, like the C word is cancer. You took on tradition, and that can really rock our boats.
Yeah,
it's amazing how that happens. Here at this congregation, one of their practices they had in place for I don't know how many decades, is they always include the Lord's Prayer when they do the sharing of joys and concerns. And when I asked people, why do you include that? When I was going through initially the worship bulletin, okay, why do you include this? Why do you include that? Why is it like this? And, let me get an idea of, and in general, just about everything in their order of worship, people didn't have any idea for it. They just said, well, it's tradition.
Mhm.
So I did an experiment and I included a bulletin insert for weeks out of different translations of the Bible, different versions of the Bible, the Lord's Prayer, and with a little bit of a narrative on the back on what, breaking down the Lord's Prayer, the meaning behind it.
Ooh.
And there was a week we did it in, it was out of the New Living Translation. And Jerome, I think it was about 8 people came and wanted to talk to me about my theology.
Whoa.
That week. And why did we do that? You know that Vera cried. She cried about that. She doesn't know if she's going to come back if we're going to do the Lord's Prayer in some hippie way.
Jeez.
So, okay, people, you asked for it. So that opened up another door of, okay, why do we do things the way we do? And oh, by the way, the Bible you guys adopted was the New Revised Version. Let's read the Lord's Prayer out of that versus how you like it in New King James
Ooh,
language.
yes, thank you.
Well, I think a lot of it is, and this is going back to Christian education, the class, where we don't talk about, like, first off, most people have like no idea about the ecumenical movement. Drives me totally insane. Because I'm in a church where I listen to them, and I'm on committees, but I'm not in actual ministry there. And I listen to them and I go, okay, you guys did not get the memo, did you? You did not get the memo. And having that, okay, so why did the churches do this? Why are we ecumenical partners? Do you guys even know? And they'll look at you and say no. And like, especially because my church, the disciples of Christ, you guys didn't have the weird things that we did in the UCC. The formation of the UCC was very, very strange. So a lot of the people have no idea why this even occurred. So you have to sit down and really, again, kind of like, I think you said that, Jeff, or maybe it was Jerome. I don't remember. One of you two did. Where you said, people are still at milk stage.
Yeah.
And we really have to say, okay, we're going to have to like really take baby steps with this. Like, my congregation, I tease them. I have fun with it. And because I'm not in the clergy, I just like to poke them a little bit. And I think as a pastor, you can't be afraid to poke them just a tad. This is our job, actually. If you were really a shepherd and you had some sheep going astray, you're going to poke them with the shepherd staff and go, or pull them back, or that's what you're going to do. And because I come from the Black tradition and we look at church totally different, I sit there and I laugh all the time. And people go, why are you laughing? And I said, let me explain. I said, obviously I love you guys because I worship with you. I said, but you guys do some interesting things. And they're like, well, what? And I think being those conversations, maybe not from the pulpit, maybe as pastors, we need to say, let's understand our traditions. Why do we do the things we do? Because most people don't. We just go through the motions. And me coming from a Black evangelical church to a white mainline church, and I asked people, I said, you guys don't ask me. You have no curiosity whatsoever why I am here. Okay, do you see how many Black people are in a mainline church? Not many. You should be like, so what attracted you here? I said, the fact that you guys have no curiosity. I just look at you guys and go, aren't you curious to learn more? I said, because that's what we're kind of dealing with. We're dealing with, a society that's either disillusioned or you know, I have actually turned to being spiritual but not religious. And, you know, I have an older congregation and they will look at me and say, we know we need to change. Okay. So are we ready to have a conversation about this?
Yeah.
And I think that's what, as pastors, we have to say, okay, you know, if you guys get so focused on, and I think, Chris, you taught this in maybe in our last class, you're so focused on dying that you're not focused on what does it needs, what do we need to do to be a healthy church? What do we need to do to live? Well, that means you're going to have to learn something.
Right.
You know, and I'm not attacking your traditions. You know, it's kind of like what we did this week with Paul. Okay, you had to be kind of brave to say, all right, I'm going to look at Paul and take him off his pedestal. You know, not to discredit him, but to actually see him as he is. You know, because there's a lot of people in my congregation talking about Billy Graham that they'll go, we need someone like Billy Graham again. And I go, okay. And they go, we need someone to tell the churches what to do. And I said, we can study the Bible and, you know, sit down and have conversations about this.
Someone's telling us.
You know, with nothing, you know, we can take active part in our growth here, people. And, you know, we were watching, you know, because Franklin Graham has done a video series on his dad. So we were watching that and I'm sitting down there just laughing. And they're like, what is so funny, Lucy? And I go, well, Billy Graham was a man of his time. I said, I'm not saying that his faith was not sincere. I'm just saying he was a man of his time. And they looked at me and they said, well, why do you say that? And I said, well, you know, the Cold War was going on. And if you thought that a bomb was going to drop on you any second now, you would probably be a little bit concerned that if you died right now, where would you be?
Here it is.
I said, the Cold War is over. I said, so we don't have that hyped up fear where we actually are thinking about, if I die tonight, what's going to happen to me? I said, so now we have a totally different situation where we haven't come up and said, so how do we connect with these people? And I said, most of this younger generation, I said, we are products of the Cold War. I said, everyone sitting in this room is a product of the Cold War. I said, you have to realize that conflict happened for 45 years. Okay, it changed us. It changed us as a nation. I said, and we became kind of some strange people. I said, now that conflict is over. And I said, you know, it kind of started falling, that vision of being united started falling with the Vietnam War. Now we just ended the Afghan war. And I said, and we are, you know, now we have the Ukraine war, and we are all at each other's throats. And I said, you know, we should be sitting down and saying, you know, things have changed. So, okay, people have different concerns now than what they did when Billy Graham was preaching. And we're not meeting that up. So, okay, that means that I actually have to do more studying on my part as a leader of a church to kind of say, okay, so I need to wrap my head around what is going on and why are people not responding to the gospel message. Doesn't mean that the gospel message is not true. But if I have people in my pews that are going, but Billy Graham was so wonderful, and you go, what year is it again? It's not 1950s, it's 2022 the last time I checked. What year is it again? And the society is totally different now. So we have to be able to relate. Paul was good at being able to transition and relate to different cultures. That's how he was able to establish these churches. He knew I had to be a chameleon. I got to shape shift. I got to understand that culture and what I'm dealing with in that town.
Yeah.
Where I don't think as Americans, we kind of are in touch with what's going on with our communities.
Right.
We have a church dying here, just outside the outskirts of our town. It's an old Lutheran church. It's built on ground that was established when the original Swedish pioneers were out here with their sheep. And it's called the Valby Church, and it's a historical site. And there's a young couple that grew up in that church that are active members here now. And part of they spoke to that lack of the ability to look at things differently and change. Lucy, exactly what you're saying is a number of the people in that church. That's kind of the stuff that they cry out about. We just need to get back to this. And so there's 4. I can't think of a more appropriate way to put it right now. 4 couples of childbearing age that are connected to the families of that church. And that's what that congregation's solution is. They're in their final stage of life. They're going to close. But their solution is these 4 individuals need to start making babies, because that's how we're going to grow the church. And it's kind of like, you know, you guys were thriving and vital in 1955. And that was the model you were operating under. And now you're, you know, the challenge is to close with dignity.
Right. This church, the pastor talks about being a legacy church, that they are a legacy church, and they've been around. Their building was built in 18 something. And so this last week, I've been giving thought to legacy. What does it mean to be a legacy church? And, you know, to be living on someone else's legacy. And then what is our legacy, right?
Yeah.
So, and when I work with churches that really need to close, you know, we just talk about the life cycle. What's your will? You know, the capital W, will. What is it that, what's your estate, and to whom are you going to pass that on, and be faithful, and better, as you say, Jeff, to die with dignity, rather than just, you know, to hold on and die alone. Yeah. Yeah, that question, what are you willing to give up? Right? We talk about what we want to take on. What are you willing to give up? There's a doctor in Yates Center, Kansas. He's got to be close to 90 now. And I understand he's still driving and still practicing. Dr. John Atkins. And Dr. Atkins would say, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to fire you as a patient. I mean, that's the bottom line. I'm just not going to do it. And, you know, it would be things like, you have to stop smoking. And people, and I know it took me forever to stop smoking, right? But what are you willing to give up? Or, you know, again, friends, and I may be talking about you, that, you know, I just, it blew me away to see one of my pastors, when I was a regional minister, out in the parking garage of a hotel, shooting himself up with two shots of insulin, because he knew he was going to have a drink and eat desserts when he was at this banquet, this big gigantic that we were going to. And you know, I don't know, I've buried too many ministers who died because of the vestiges or whatever of diabetes. You know, and it's like, oh my gosh. Or one of my guys who was, I don't know, he was very, very large, and he would eat all of this stuff when we would go to their church for the ministers' meetings. And there he is. And I said to him one day, I thought you had diabetes. He's like, yeah, I just take a couple extra insulins, and you know, it works out. Yeah. And I buried him, right? And so, you know, what are you willing to give up? What's life? And you know, I asked my question that, and I asked myself that question as a minister. You know, I sat in on a minister conference call the other day. Bill has next level coaching. My Bill has these next level coaching, and every month ministers gather together and they work on a topic every month. And so I sat in on one this month, and you know, watching this minister really struggle with what was he willing to give up. And it was, but if I give this up and take that one on, they'll probably fire me. And it was, is it a call or is it a career? You know, what are you willing to give up and gain clarity? And oh my gosh, I'm so off base, and we're at 9:23. or 7:23 or 10:23. Maybe. I don't think we have any mountain time folk here. Yeah, and I'll let you go. So any questions, last thoughts, good of the order?
I have one question. Could you, I wish Marcia was here. She had the same question. Could you elaborate on the little bit on the no go, the 3-year?
Oh, yeah, no go. So it really is about having saying these are our milestones, this is where we're going, and then you have milestones. And so it's are you in progress? And if you're not, then you've got to call a no-go. In church has to have at an absolute minimum for a full-time minister 100 people, and now really that needs to be about 150 because of because church is just not in people's blood anymore, and they have to rework how their budgets and whatnot to be able to support the church with tithes and offerings and gifts. Reprioritize, that takes time to get into place. What was the other reason for that? Just with economy, the economic state and whatnot. So and we underpay our ministers in horrendous ways. Somebody just said that a minister left, went into nonprofit work, and still was making more money than he was making in ministry, horrendously. Yeah. And so if we're going to pay a minister a living wage, then you need about 125, 150 people. What happens with churches and revitalizations is the denomination will pour money into that, and we'll say, okay, we're gonna pay all the bills for 1 year, and then we're gonna the next year we're gonna take it down a third, then down 2/3. You've got to be totally self-supporting at the end of 3 years. And over and over and over again, we figure out how to keep giving them money. And so it's that painful decision. Is it go or no go? Is it sustainable? Is it not? Same thing with congregational transformation. We need to call go, no go if we have not hit those milestones. And if you were writing a small business loan, you would do that with the bank. The bank wants to see your plan. What is your plan? How are you getting there? So that's the go, no go. So you have a go, no go date where you really sit down, but you do have to have all of your pieces in place. And somebody, I don't remember who it was, presented a plan to me in the last month. And it was, okay, that's nice that you want to be at 100 people in the next 2 years, but how the heck are you going to get there? And how do you know that you're getting there and you're on board?
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm a big person on consultants and coaches. I really, really am. And one of the unfortunate pieces is that we can have a coach and we'll be talking to them and we know where we need to be going, but then we veer. So one of my rules for coachees is make no decisions between, in the in-between, that, you'll make the commitment this month of what you're going to be working on. And then you're going to report back to me the next month what you're working on. But when again, too many clients have come back, too many ministers have come back and said, whoa, we did this, we did that. It's like, oh my gosh, you just totally went over there when we were going over here. And it's not that might not be a good decision, but it's one, not what we agreed upon, but the other is we haven't taken it into, just like reading Pauline epistles, haven't taken it into the whole. So what a coach and a consultant does is look at the bigger picture, helps you set up those parts. And then because hopefully they can bring an objective view, or they hold the objective view, and we have a responsibility to do that, then we can say, wait, you're not hitting your goals. What do we need to do to we reassess along the way? But we're also the ones who have to say, you need to just call it a no-go.
We've probably, when I started in December of 2020, we were at about 25, and now we're at about an average of 50 to 55 a week. But our in between is really low as far as age group. You know, we're still a lot on the high side. Do you know in the DOC, would our regional minister be the best to get a hold of for a coaching?
Nope, 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 nope. And the coach is probably not one of the people who's been trained, probably not one of the people who's been trained at denominationally. And a lot of
Okay.
people, oh yeah, they've done it, you know, and so we just raise them up and say, you know, oh yeah, you know, here's a church planter, blah, blah, blah. What that church planter knows his or her experience and doesn't know the whole of the experience. I know this is so bad, but I'm just saying it. One of the things I love about the Effective Church Group is that we have worked with thousands of congregations over like 30 years, and we run with, I call them big dogs, but we do, you know, and so people, you know, you're reading this, people reading that, reading this, and you know, somebody will say to me, oh, have you read the new book by so and so? Well, no, I haven't, because I talked to so and so, or one of us is talking to so and so. We keep up with them, and we come from a variety of denominations, that, you know, sizes of churches, and so we bring that, and then we always have the group to come back on. But so often, I mean, okay, I have to say this. The Disciples of Christ, when we planted the church in Seattle, that was in 98 that we moved there. And part of the agreement for Bill Easum, we were part of a cohort, a group, that he did an experiment. Could mainline churches start mega churches from a small group model? It never been done in the Disciples of Christ. In fact, my master's thesis was on that, and I wanted to do a study of where it was working, and it hadn't been done before, except that Cynthia Hale at Ray of Hope in Decatur, that was the model she used, but I was told it didn't count because she was Black and it was a Black congregation. So that was, I know, my regional minister and the Commission on Church Planting were the ones who told me that. That was in 93, I think, 92, I guess, when I started working on my thesis. So anyways, so we were part of this cohort to do that. And part of the agreement to be in there was we had to go to church planter boot camp. And again, this was done mostly evangelical, that they worked with churches around the world. And that's where it was. So when we get to Seattle, we weren't yet in Seattle. When we get to Seattle, we're teaching them those, you know, what we're learning, and, you know, we're in conversations, we're on the commission, blah, 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 blah. And Rick Morris, who went on to be the head of church, came from Kirkland DOC there, just up and he was chair of that committee or commission. And so he then takes those ideas and brings them up there, but he's bastardized them. And on top of that, he only knows this little experience here. He doesn't have access, right, to all of this. And there was someone else up there in Indy who went to boot camp, and we were told, we got it through the grapevines, it was so evangelical. And, you know, that doesn't, happy birthday to your son, happy birthday to you and the memories. Yes,
Thank
I have to let you
you.
go. You're welcome. Bye. Thank you. Thank you. As I get off my pedestal here, yeah. And so this is all to say, this is like, you know, and now we have had, okay, all these 20 some years later, we've had this width of experiences overall, and more voices are at the table that help us. But coaching is the big deal right now. And
Chris,
I would-
was some of that wrapped into the New Beginnings program through Church Extension or Homeland Ministries or whatever?
Yep.
Okay. I think it was Rick came out and ran an assessment with us in the McMinnville Church. The McMinnville First Christian Church, it was established in 1847.
Wow.
It's been a continuous disciples church since that time. And one of the things that was lacking, it was a great assessment, awesome recommendations. It was very comprehensive, but there was no piece in terms of the follow-up that included any kind of a coaching aspect of it. It left our regional ministers in kind of a weird position because people wanted to use them as a reference. That wasn't the appropriate role for them.
Yes.
For me as the pastor, and we did that back when I first started the bivocational. I think we went through New Beginnings around 2002 or 2003. And, I was like, you guys, to do this for real, you need somebody coming in here that this is all they do, is facilitating this process. It was excellent, but it was lacking that piece. And I thought, this isn't going to go anywhere good, because 1 year from now, we're going to be at that go, no go place. And
Yes.
nobody's going to want to say it's a no-go, because that's, making the decision, well, we're just going to die with dignity.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would love any information that you can send me via email or anything that you would recommend. I would love to have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Yeah. Mhm. Yep. Regional ministers are in conference ministers as well are in this horrible position. If they're coaching us, remember that they write our references for search and call. Regional ministers talk amongst themselves. A lot of times it's the ministers who get blamed for things, and church transitions are absolute hell. There's no other way to say it. And I never write a consultation without a required 2-year coaching contract. I build 2-year coaching into it, because the first year people are like, okay, you'll get a few people pushing back. By the second year, more people are pushing back, and it gets a lot uglier. And so you have to have that support, right? And you get to where, what is it? You're blown about by every change wind of doctrine. Well, it's like by every screaming and yelling. We've watched too many, again, ministers die or have to deal with. I watched 5 ministers all in conflictual congregations, a history of that, battle prostate cancer over the course of 2 years. I've watched female ministers, breast cancer, who have a history, 2 other women who are on disability because of accidents that were directly related to their stress and not being on top of their game. So it's real. And yeah, it's real. Okay, I'm so sorry. I am so on a roll, and thanks for hanging through. Pray. Yeah. Oh, Father, thank you again for the work that you give us to do, and just keep us mindful of you. Again, no, not again. I ask you that specifically as we enter this time we call Holy Week, and knowing how crazy it can be, how crazy it is, how many details go into all of this, whether it be just for this week or in the Sunday to come. We know, just keep us mindful, give us those moments of mindfulness, those pockets of peace where we're reminded, no, I don't know, the Holy Spirit inspire us, not just remind us, and create those pockets of peace, those moments when we can sit with you, with Jesus, and with you, Father. Create them, and I don't know, motivate us seems like such a strong word. Just compel us to take those few moments to be with you, and multiply those moments, Lord. Maybe not in amount of times, but in in how that, I don't know, that even within compressed time, that overwhelm us with that peace within that compressed time. Yeah. Okay. Just thank you again. Thank you for these opportunities to be with you and speak loudly to us as we wrestle with these final books, and particularly Revelation. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Those moments you can't figure out how to say, like, take that little bit of time and give us more than what that time is. Okay. Thank you, guys and gals. All right. So we'll be done Thursday. Sound fair? Thursday noon. Do you want to go Thursday noon? We'll be done on Thursday noon. Do you want to end of week session on Holy Saturday? No is an available answer. How about I'll be here, and if you're here, that's awesome. And if you're not, that's awesome too. Sound good? Okay, Jerome, for your wife and her surgery is on Friday. Just may her healing be swift. The surgery go without any hitches. May it be an opportunity to declare the healing power of Jesus, and may you have peace as well, and just quiet. Okay, take care of you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, all. Bye. Bye. Enjoy your day, please.